Fourth Way has a concept called the good housekeeper. Gurdjieff is the teacher that teaches this system. I learned it from Mami Onami, who is huge on the respect of discipline, but that's huge with Fourth Way as well. And so the idea that if you don't have your finances in order, you're obviously, your attention is pulled in two different directions, and primarily focused on survival. And so if you're just constantly in a survival mode, where do you have the space and the energy to self-reflect and really see how you're responding to various situations from the inside? Right? So like, it's easy to say that we have been taught discipline on the outside, where we're meant to go to school, 9-to-5 job, take no vacation, and sort of do these things. But when you begin to do work on yourself, your discipline and your aim will shift. It will shift from what the outside world thinks is worth the time, effort, and energy, and then you've got your own version of dedication and discipline. And a good housekeeper, really, I like the word, how it's used too, because the house would be me. The house would be my life. Can I manage it? And can I give can this sort of effort create a flow that allows me to look deeper into myself? And the whole point of the system is to find your most authentic self. It's not just like, oh, this is just the way I am. It's just, how actually are you? And even a better question is, would you be the same version of yourself no matter what your life circumstances are? So my hesitation to sort of even begin to teach something that has been so impactful to my life is because when I'm struggling to live the bigger principles of it, it's like I forget that there's so much grace, and like, you can learn something, but then when you level up, you're in a different environment. Can you use those same tools the same? So when I think about the ways of which I have been a good housekeeper, it's as I continue to change myself and the situations around me, I'm risking that. And then the idea of what stays true to me, whether I have financial stability or I don't have financial stability, is somewhat of what's true in me and what's authentic in me. And so to say that these characteristic traits are authentic to you, I ask myself, like, is this something that I do mechanically? Is it something that I kind of just do robotically? Is it been so instilled and ingrained in me that I'm just robotically doing this thing? Or is it something that I'm choosing? And that's where I think I've struggled with, like, the bridge between, am I choosing this and this is what I actually want to do, or is this just like what I've been doing? Sometimes for me that creates financial instability while I'm trying to, shift into the more comfortable, okay, this is actually who I am. And the whole point of having, luckily, I think for myself, I've experienced some financial security from my own doing, but I can look back now and observe that I might have had money, but I didn't have the emotional experience within myself. I didn't have any harmony. I was still very, very, very asleep. Those were very sort of mechanical, doing it just because, sort of, it felt like that anyways. If I look back on it, there was passion and excitement in the career that I have. It's just that now I desire more, and more meaning, like, I want to hit that tune inside of me that feels like the most authentic self more frequently. And I notice that it's really challenging for me to be that version of myself and connect with the part of me that knows that there's endless abundance, and that the creator is just as comfortable in connection with me, because I'm asking for it and I'm offering it as I am with it. And I can feel when I'm struggling financially that if I turn to a source of that, it feels very like and I think it's okay to surrender and say, like, I need help, I'm struggling. It feels very different otherwise to turn to it with a knowing of we're just co-creators. Like, I'm opening up a channel to allow the closeness. But when I'm financially struggling, even when it's my own doing, there's a sort of an energetic barrier of maybe it definitely could be named shame, guilt. It could be named these things, but ultimately it's, I know I'm not living the authentic tastes of myself I've had before, or the discipline that I know that it would take to get me to those places. A fourth way also says you really only have to give up one thing, and that's basically your favorite form of suffering. And so there's something that she said recently as she's she always does the ritual at the beginning of the year, but she's like, your favorite form of suffering is all you have to give up. And it's really just something along the lines of, having money is kind of boring. For me, this hit heavy because I'm always like, what's next? Ooh, everything's so exciting. I want to try this. I want to move here. I want to do this. And that's that's some of my problem, is there's like a lack of discipline and this sort of like, can I be honest with myself that like I get bored and I can't stay still with where I'm at. And there's this element of telling on yourself, and the fourth way that you're telling on yourself to yourself. And for me, this just really helps to tell it out loud. But there's a truth to why I'm not financially stable, because I'm always like, ooh, what's next? On to the next thing. So to give up that comfort of the suffering is kind of silly to say, but it's really just giving up this idea of who I am, and stopping the identifying as I'm this version, and really having a hard time with breaking those patterns inside of myself. And the breaking of the patterns inside of yourself when it comes to money is really challenging because, one, we don't talk about it enough. We also don't talk about sex and death enough, in my opinion. But we have these sort of like major things like finances that we don't speak enough about, and it's very personal, and we're not really taught that well how to deal with it. And so when I think back to just like my whole financial life experience personally, as children, we get a financial story as well, whether our parents have money or we don't have money. And then it's your job as a grown-ass adult, and this is what the fourth way offers, is how to look at it and decipher what stories are real and which ones you've told yourself based off what you saw. But as you get older, it becomes your responsibility. And I have my own financial experience where I have been able to create an income. And so there's this reminder of like, if I've done it once, I can do it again. But then there's this also like knowing of what it sort of meant, what it sort of offered, and thinking about how I don't have it right now, but I can get it. And the sort of nuance of that is like the energetics it takes for me to hold that. Like, how can I hold the fact that having money or stability is boring? And like, how can I hold the energetics of changing I was looking for my water. How can I hold the energetics of somebody who deserves and is worth the wealth and the life that I actually want? And so I know that with observation, there's been points where I would be like, I'm not the person who deserves to have the things that I want, whether it be the home with the view, or the luxury clothing, or just the nervous system that it takes to manage money coming in and holding it. Or even the scarier part of it is like can I build it? Like, can I build it outside of what I already do? And a bigger picture of that would be like, yes, I'm down for change. I'm a change like tornado. Like, can I build it out of something that I've never done before? I like doing new things. Why is this one thing harder? Why is anything harder? Could be a great question. And Fourth Way really puts it in there that like, we're not really like, we can't really like do. We just are. We are just experiencing this external life and we're just like relating to it. We're not really like walking our own path. We're not even driving our own car. We're just kind of like whatever is happening. So it's not that I can offer myself grace when I'm struggling to start something new because it's challenging. It's so different. It's not my personality or it's not my identity. It's not this. It's all these ways that you can look at it through Fourth Way. Meaning that like it's not who I identify as, etc. But I want to. And so the desire to be and the desire to overcome that starts to feel like a little bit heavier than the challenge that it takes to be that person anymore. It doesn't align with my values if I'm being honest with myself that I can want something new and I love new experiences and I love changing and I love doing all this, but yet I would struggle to change my career. That's a really hard thing for me to wrap my head around. I hear this saw is extra loud. So the point that comes up to me when I take a minute to think about that is one of the greater teachings of observing yourself is noticing the contradictions within yourself. And the point of what being could look like, the reality of being could look like, is having something within you that's just unchangeable in a way, something that's constant, something that you're choosing, or it could just be like you have a constant connection with God, which is, it could be that you just constantly know how to find your peace. You know that there's something permanent in you. And the impermanence looks like when you're on the road, someone cuts you off, you lose your shit. You are facing hardship, your personalities change different. These sort of you don't know who you are because you haven't sincerely looked at yourself. And so when everything element outside of you changes, you either shift with it or basically, I want to say like you lose the baton because like another version of you steps in, but there's not actually like a solid foundation of who's running the show inside of you. And a really great analogy that Fourth Way gives is the master of a house. And so it's kind of good housekeeping to do this too, as well as like you have you're this mansion, let's just say. And a really good way that brought this to my attention was, and then you live in the basement. You have this beautiful house, but you live in the basement. And if someone were to explain to you live in the basement of a beautiful mansion, you'd be like, there's no fucking way. And you'd be like, I'm happy with this kitchen, this little tiny window in this room. And someone's like, no, yeah, but up here there's like a bunch of windows and like a bathtub and like a chef to cook you some food. And you're like, that's crazy. And it's like, just look up here, like just come up here and experience it. And that's just kind of like all the analogies of like, if you don't move, you don't know that you're under chains. A prisoner doesn't know to escape unless somebody else tells them. It's hard to acknowledge when you're a slave to something, especially if the slaved, like whether it be the technology or you're a slave to the system when they're doing a good job, you think you're free. So it's hard to acknowledge where you are and where you could be. So the whole point of Fourth Way is to be like, whoa, there's so much more out there. There's so much more that I am. And this isn't even like, no, I don't need these things. It's just that you are this thing. It's not even a matter of like, I don't need to have more. It's just that you are more. We are just like taught in a lot of different ways, being programmed by external things that we're just not something that we really are. we're bigger, we're this grand house, we're the internet, we're the universe. We are God experiencing itself through ourselves. So it's not really a matter of like, no, I'm good. It's just like you just didn't know, and we're kind of that they're doing a good job. The point was to tell us that there's nothing else to go seeking. So anyways, the house is so big, let's just say. It needs a gardener, it needs a maid, it needs it's like a manager or a butler, it needs a driver, it needs whatever, all these things. But the point is there's always still a master, like somebody who owns the home. You own the home. But you leave the home, and every time you leave the home, meaning that you're not present, one of these other non-important employees takes over. So you're walking around in the case of you're the homeowner, you're the master of your property, and you have an accountant, and like you leave that accountant, you don't leave the accountant in charge. The fucking accountant is always in charge and like coming in and taking the baton and saying all we actually care about is money and finances, and this is the bottom line, and this is where we're at. Some people, it's the maid, the person who really is just like stuck on the presence of what you look like and how you present, and the other could just be the sort of chef or the handyman. Like it's always like in fix it mode, it's always in feed it mode. But the reality of, let's just say we take this whole analogy, we put it to a corporation where you're the CEO of a company, and your main mission statement is to love all beings, be present, and know what like this stillness inside of you feels like. But all these other employees and characters are always like, yeah, but we really care about this, and we really care about this, and like this is our personality, and this is how we're gonna show up. And it's like, but if the homeowner or the CEO had everybody in the corporation living the mission, everybody in the mission would be exuding this sort of this main mission. But because we're so scattered as it is, and you only come into contact with you have to come into contact with the disorder that you are before you can create some type of order. But knowing it, I think, is pretty powerful and interesting, to just know that we have this constant turnover of identities, and how do you stay within one of them? How do you say the master is like, this is our mission? And so bringing it back to money and Good Housekeeper in that way is just how, when everything changes around you, finances and all, how do you stay in your center? And knowing what that looks like, for me, I know, learning the hard way, that when I'm in survival mode too much, too long, it's really hard for me to stay on mission, because the mission for me could look like always being at peace, let's just say, but like it's really challenging for me to find peace when I can't pay my bills or feed myself, let's say. So then the priorities sort of stack on top of each other, and it's easy to get lost and like, well, who am I actually? So like, how do we deal with it and navigate it when we're going through new seasons and new changes? It's not as simple all the time for everybody, and if it's for you, that's amazing. But for me, it's not the same. Like, this work on myself, this spiritual progression and enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it, awakening, has like levels to it. And so I'm grateful and lucky enough to know to keep continuing to go seeking the experience of connection that I have with my higher self, the connection I have with the tune that strikes when I'm just really at harmony with myself. But there's truth to be known of what elements need to happen around me in order to create that. And it does feel, it's expression, it's having a safe home, it's being energetically attuned, it's taking time to be disciplined, it's multiple things for sure. But it's also just really cool to have this like awareness of knowing where I am, and knowing that this has to be a priority under even just like these thoughts and conditions. There's so much more that it brings up and makes me want to talk about, which is exciting, because that's being a good housekeeper to me also does mean like having an excitement and a passion for something. So I've been just kind of like lukewarm in this experience, and with being pregnant, there's a reflex of purpose that's like, I want to do it more. There's a more of a purpose and a drive. There's this like, there's a truth to, well, there's a big truth to it that like I learned fourth way, and I needed someone to teach it to me, mostly verbally and through another teacher, through Onami. And I want to teach it just because I want to know what's there, but also because I have like a little person that I would like to bring up in an environment that this is like mostly normal to know yourself, and like try not to like pressure it down. And really, I did a lot of work to unlearn stuff. Okay, I unlearned a lot of things. I want to learn. I want to teach things that I've unlearned, the things that I've learned through unlearning. And just the truth is that the lesson is really about finances right now, and what I do in order to tidy that area up. And how that looks on one end is getting a physical, literal job, and on the other end is showing up authentically with listening to the inner tune of my inner soul that really wants to share this teaching and share this work and share this space, and not only tell on myself, but like experience what it feels like when I tell on myself, and hope that other people are looking for this that I was looking for too. Like, how do I know myself better? How do I create these sort of changes, and in the ways that you've been trying may or may not have been working, and this is may or may not feel new to you, but this was very new to me. This was very like, whoa, like I think the human design and astrology and things are really cool, but when I learned a fourth way, I was like, whoa, this is cool. Like, it's not even just the principles of it, it's the excitement of even just thinking that it involves the Enneagram. And the Enneagram is the master of all systems, the face of God. It includes all the laws, the law of 3, the law of 7. It's got octaves. It's a very moving, conscious map. It's so cool for me to figure out how to apply my life to these concepts, and it just gives me more clarity. Sometimes it's confusion for sure, but it gives me more clarity in where I'm at. Like, it doesn't feel so lost in the dark sometimes. It's not faith driven, it's verification. And that's what I think I'm cool with, is like, okay, if I do this and I see this is what I get. This is who I am. This are my contradictions. Verification. Not like God says, and you can hold on to faith and have this, that, or the other. It's not an outside job, it's an inside job. Can I verify this for myself? And I really like that sort of teaching, because I don't really like to be told something. I'm just very much at my core, like, if you tell me that smells, I'll be like, I'll be the one to decide. Like, it's just in my bones to experience and experiment. And this system really speaks to that. And so while I'm going through the harder challenges, I can experiment and take the concepts, apply it to what's going on, and think, okay, does this add up? Is this true? Yes, it's true. Or no, that I've been making that lie up for too long. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Fourth way is something I'm pretty excited about, and the most I can hope is that there's a version of me on the other side, and then I'm just speaking to her. Somebody that speaks my language, somebody that delivers something in a way that's like, interesting. And like, you just don't really hate, you don't hate like how it's coming across. It's probably going to be a little aggressive sometimes. Sometimes it's going to be a lot messy. I'm just figuring it out. So this is for anybody else who is just figuring it out, man. Thanks for being here.